A slow website creates a bad user experience. According to Google, more than half of visits are abandoned if a web page takes longer than 3 seconds to load. This is no surprise when users want to find answers to their queries quicker than I can say search engine optimization. This bad experience can drive users to simply exit the website and head to the next. Website traffic and conversions will ultimately plummet, and that's terrible for your Google rankings. So how do you make sure that yours or your client's website is super speedy and offers a great page experience? Stay tuned and I'll tell you how. Hey, it's Emily here from Fat Joe, where we provide productized SEO and content services designed for agencies and marketing teams. Let's start by looking at the reasons why a fast website loading speed is so important. Page loading speed has been a Google ranking factor on desktop for over 10 years. According to Google, a web page with a 2-second delay from 1 to 3 seconds can increase bounce rate by 32%. And just a 1-second delay in mobile load times can impact conversions by up to 20%. These factors, among many others, led Google to add page speed as a mobile ranking factor in 2018. Bear in mind that site speed isn't the only ranking factor, one of the strongest being search intent, meaning that your website can still rank in Google if the content is really relevant but the website is slow. However, with page experience becoming increasingly important, especially since the introduction of Google's Core Web Vitals, we're starting to see a shift in developers' attention towards optimizing page speed, meaning if you don't, you could be left behind. How to check site speed. You can check the site speed for free using Google's Page Speed Insights. Enter the URL and click Analyze. This will offer up an overall score for mobile and desktop. You could also try Pingdom or Ahrefs site audit tool. All these tools will tell you a ton of ways you can optimize site speed, but in this video we're going to touch upon the most common issues. How to improve WordPress site speed. There are so many reasons why your website might be slow, and some of these are quite technical. I'm going to show you ways to identify and fix site speed issues that you can work on today, or at least include in a brief to a freelancer or dev team to work on. We'll start with optimizing images. Having correctly optimized images can save a surprising amount of load time. You can start by adding lazy load to your web pages. This means that only the content above the fold will load, so the server won't waste time loading a load of images that the user may not see. WordPress version 5.5 does this automatically, which highlights the importance of keeping your website updated. However, this won't help the images above the fold. By this I mean the images that exist above the bottom of the screen. For these images, you particularly need to consider file type. Some file types offer better compression than others. WebP, for example, was developed by Google and is becoming increasingly popular because it carries transparency and is smaller in file size than PNG. If you have loads of existing images, you can use plugins such as ShortPixel or Imagify to compress and convert images to WebP. But I'd argue that using plugins for image compression isn't always the most efficient. You often lose the quality of the image when auto mass compressing, which is why I prefer to use Photoshop to do this manually, simply because you can play around with the optimization settings and have much more control over the resulting quality of the image. I'm sure you're now wondering, what is a good file size for images? Various websites fluctuate between recommending between 150 and 300 kilobytes per image, but I'd stay below 150 just to be sure. This is because the average total page size is around 3 megabytes, but you want this to be as low as possible. Beyond image compression, you should also consider using third-party video hosting to save space on your WordPress site. Caching is a way of temporarily storing copies of a website, ready to be loaded whenever a user requests to display the content. Caching allows for a much quicker loading time because the content isn't being completely re-rendered every time there's a request to view it. So when a user visits your website for the first time, an image, for example, will be downloaded and cached on the user's browser. When they make their second visit, the image will instantly appear because it will already exist on their browser. You can set a browser cache time of 3 months to 1 year for images and CSS files that don't change frequently. But for dynamic content, such as news content, you may choose to cache files for a much shorter time, or maybe even not at all. You can use a plugin to control your website's cache. There are free options such as W3 Total Cache. WP Rocket is more user-friendly, but there is a yearly subscription cost. Be wary of using plugins to manage your cache, because if your website's on a managed WordPress host and they take care of caching for you, then these plugins may not be required and may actually make your website slower. Now we'll look at improving the server response time. You can't really improve the server response time yourself. This, along with a few of the technical elements of your website, are dependent on the hosting provider. With this in mind, when choosing a hosting provider, or if you're thinking of switching, I'd recommend that you choose one based on the location of your users. For example, if your users are in the US, but your server's data center is in Australia, then your data has a long way to travel, which contributes to a slow loading speed. Alternatively, if your customers are located in various locations all over the world, you'll want to be using a good content distribution network, or CDN. This is where copies of your website are stored on various servers, located in multiple locations so that users have faster access to your website because they're closer to those locations. As well as server location, you need to consider other performance bottlenecks, such as slow routing, slow database queries, or inadequate memory. All these elements can impact your site speed and can be resolved with a hosting switch. Minification is a quick fix to optimizing the existing code. Removing spacing, comments, and unnecessary characters from WordPress code is a process called minifying code, and this can improve your site speed and performance. These variables may have been added by developers to make it easier for others who may later work on the code, but it does increase the file size. And as you now know, you want to keep all file sizes as small as possible. If you don't have much coding experience and you want a simple way to minify your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then you can use a simple plugin called WP Super Minify. Or for more options, you could use Auto Optimize, which will also optimize Google Fonts and WordPress emojis. Eliminate render blocking scripts. If you've ever run your website through Google PageSpeed Insights, I imagine you've received the recommendation to eliminate render blocking resources. When a web page loads, it sends out calls to every script in a queue, which needs to be empty before the page is at least even a little visible to the user. When a queue is long, it can take a while before users are able to access your site. The queue of scripts that can stop your website from fully loading are the render blocking JavaScript and CSS files. Often, many of these scripts aren't needed for users to view the content above the fold, so should be deferred until the most important content is loaded. The final recommendation we have to optimize the page loading speed of a website is to remove any unused themes and plugins. Now, I know in this video I've mentioned that you may need to add a few plugins to your website, but if you've set up a website from scratch, you'll notice that most come with standard themes and plugins that you won't use, and therefore don't need. You may also have a large number of multifunctional plugins that take up a lot of space, but you're only using a single element. In this case, it's better to find a faster, lighter plugin that serves that one purpose. And if you've found a new plugin, remember to delete the old one. Also, make sure to keep themes and plugins updated. You may need to do this manually or hire someone to keep on top of them. Either way, you need to be using the most recent versions to make sure that everything runs and loads smoothly. Not only that, but if you don't update themes, the website security can be compromised, which is a massive problem, particularly for e-commerce websites. There are so many ways that you can optimize a website to improve site speed, but I hope that these tips give you a head start towards identifying and fixing the most common site speed issues. We publish new videos on SEO and digital marketing topics every Wednesday, so make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications. And if you've got any questions, leave these in the comments below.